Hello, welcome everyone to the live broadcast, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are about to go deep dive into an important and thought provoking discussion today, which is about dealing with uncertainty, leading with clarity when projects get messy. And let me make sure we are seeing this. I hope everyone can see me. Okay, here you go. Okay,
Hello.
yeah, we are live. I just wanted to make sure you are seeing and hearing me. Okay, so welcome again to this live broadcast. We are having a great discussion today. So thank you so much for joining us. It's all about dealing with uncertainty and leading with clarity, especially when things get messy. If you're in projects, which most of you are, you know that every project it brings its share of uncertainty. Things such as shifting schedules, evolving scope changes, and incomplete information, just to name a few. And while structured processes like risk assessment or, let's say, stage gate are designed to help, they are not always there to address the human side of decision making. Biases, emotions, and values can all shape how we interpret risks and respond to challenges. Don't you agree? So the question is, how can we cut through the noise, lead with clarity, and guide our team with confidence, even when things get messy? And that's exactly what we are going to discuss today. That's our today's discussion is all about dealing with uncertainty. So you're about to discover some practical strategies for strengthening resilience, reducing bias, and making better decisions under pressure. Sounds like an exciting conversation, isn't it? So, if it is, before we get started, please let us know in the chat who you are and where you are tuning in from. So, please have a quick introduction, introduce yourself, your role, and from which country you are tuning in from. We would love to hear from you. And may I ask for a quick favor? If you are here, please and share this love with your community. So don't forget to click on repost or reshare depending on which platform you are tuning in, because we are live in three different platforms in YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So depending on where you are, please click reshare and repost so others in your network can also join this valuable conversation as well. I would appreciate it. So, about us, I am Shohreh Ghorbani, your host for today, and I'm thrilled to welcome you, first of all, and our fantastic guest speaker all the way from Australia, whom I had the honor to meet years back. And I'm so thrilled that I have the opportunity to share this stage with him once again here in this virtual platform. So he is Laurie Bowman, the author of Dealing with Uncertainty, the Art and Science of Resilience in Decision Making. Laurie brings decades of experience in project controls, especially risk management, and he'll be sharing insights that you can put into practice right away. And he's bringing insights from his decades of experience in projects and also through this amazing book that he has written. So, without any further ado, please help me give a big warm welcome to Laurie Bowman to come on stage and have a quick introduction of himself. Laurie, if you are here, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Australia so early in the morning. So, thank you so much for being here, Laurie.
Thank you very much, Shohreh, for the opportunity. Very nice to connect with you here virtually, and welcome listeners. It's really good to connect with you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurie. So, just to start off the conversation and before we dive into the topic, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Laurie, and what led you into the world of risk management, especially decision making in projects?
Yeah, very, very happy to. So my background is in engineering, and now I have over 3 decades of experience on a combination of engineering and technology projects, actually. And I've always thoroughly enjoyed projects and the idea of creating something new. And throughout that time, I've come to realise that it's the easy stuff that is really the less interesting. So when we know a lot about a project, it's fairly easy to execute, and it will typically happen as planned. It's really the uncertainty on a project, which tends to be both the source of problems and as well as the source of opportunities. So for me, the opportunity to support project team members, in particular project managers who are often very busy and time poor, to help them and support them through leading practices in risk management and decision making through things such as effective project controls is extremely valuable. Almost like being the navigator for a busy pilot on a plane or something like that, where you have the time to bring facts, data, and analysis to help guide the decision making and help to make the project more successful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this quick introduction. Really appreciate that, Laurie. So I know you also is an author right now, author of an amazing book. I had a chance to go through and I enjoyed every piece of that I had a chance to read through. So dealing with uncertainty. Can you tell us a bit more about the book and what made you write that book, Laurie?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So being an author is quite new to me. But similar to what I mentioned earlier about the value of risk management and project controls on projects, for me, it was really a chance to tell a story about the two sides of risk management and dealing with uncertainty. And firstly is the quantitative side, so the structured methodologies, the decision-making frameworks and those sorts of things, but also the qualitative side, so the human factors, so the human element to it, because it's very, very powerful. And often there'll be books that are written specifically about one domain. So one domain being, quantitative techniques, for example, or the other domain being human factors. The idea with this book was to bring them together, because to really have effective decision-making frameworks and to help project team members navigate through uncertainty, I felt like a combination of the quantitative techniques as well as the qualitative techniques and the human factors really helps bring it together well.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Really appreciate that. For those who haven't yet had a chance to read through this book, Dealing with Uncertainty, to be honest, let me just share a quick story. When I got Laurie's book, and it was months ago, I got that through Amazon, and I opened the book thinking, okay, it's going to be a highly technical project controls risk related to risk, which is not my area of expertise. So I was a bit hesitant to go through that, but I was pleasantly surprised on how simple, relatable, and understandable it was. And I started reading the book when I was going through a very hard time in the personal life. When my dad passed away, it was a week after. And when Laurie asked about me and how I'm doing, and he realized I got back to work so fast to be able to cope with this or kind of escape from that. He gave me a great advice and told me to go back to his book and page this and go through this. And it was late at night because of the time zone differences. So when I went through his book and before I went to bed, I couldn't stop my tears because in those pages, Laurie mentioned what made him write that book and his aha moment, wake up call. And also I got a sign from reading that one page or 2 pages, I believe, that Laurie told me. So I clicked immediately and I couldn't wait to dive more into this book. It resonated deeply with me. So thank you so much, Laurie. It's really hard to find a book that make you cry, but your book did that for me. So, and I really appreciate you for making such a context of uncertainty in such a beautiful language that anyone can relate to. Can you tell us a bit more? Is it like heavily technical? Is it maybe is of me telling the audience? What made you write it in such a beautiful language that everyone can relate to?
Yes, thank you very much for sharing that, Shohreh. It really means so much to me that it's affected you in that way. So where it really came from is it's almost the idea that the way we live our lives is almost like the way we run projects. Life is like a project, or I would say even more so, life is like a portfolio of projects where we're always choosing to do different things. And each thing that we choose to do is almost like a mini project. And depending on how well we navigate through all of those projects, we wind up having a sort of a successful and prosperous life and relationships with those around us. So many of the examples in the book do draw on personal examples. And that's really because for me, that's where I've found a lot of the learning through navigating through personal uncertainties and then using that as a learning opportunity and exploring how that gets applied on projects as well. So a lot of it is comes down to the fundamentals of what it means to be a human being. So the idea that, you know, through our evolutionary history, we've tried to avoid threats, which is exactly what we do on projects. We try to avoid downside risks, and we try to chase rewards. So we like things like good food, just like on a project. We want to make good profit on a project so that our companies are sustainable. So a lot of the examples don't just draw on project scenarios, they also draw on personal scenarios, recognizing that our own lives are like a mini project.
So basically, whoever is watching this can enjoy the book, not just on the technical context, but also on the personal side as well. And
Yes.
that was how you made it possible for everyone to relate to.
Yes. So for one example, rather than, you know, talking about a quantitative risk analysis, one example I share in the book is when I was simply crossing the street in Chennai, India. And I was due to have a very important meeting with someone, and I was running late. And so I was feeling so terrible that I was running late for this man who I was meeting, his daughter was getting married, so he was particularly busy, and I felt terrible. And all I had to do was cross the road to the hotel where I was supposed to meet him. But the traffic was just so busy that there was no way I could cross the road. I'd never experienced traffic like it was in India, in Chennai at the time. And I just stood there on the side of the road looking at this traffic, and all of my risk management experience could not figure out how to get across the road. It was just so busy. And I just stood there looking, waiting for there to be a gap in the traffic. And of course, there was no gap in the traffic. It was just continuous. And as I stood there just staring at the traffic, completely helpless, a small Indian boy, a small local boy came up to me and he said, "Oh, I've been watching you. You're never going to get across that road." And I said to him, "Yes, I know. Thank you for telling me." And he looked at me and smiled and then grabbed my hand and just started walking directly into the traffic. And of course, all the cars just veered away, and we're quite happy just to sort of swerve around. And there was no road rage, there was no anger or anything like that, but almost like Moses parting the sea or something like that. This young boy just walked me across the road, and off I went and had my meeting on time. So for me, it was a really valuable lesson that sometimes in life and sometimes on projects as well, if we're dealing with something new, something we haven't experienced before, it's a good idea to listen to somebody who's got different life experience or someone who's got a different perspective. And in this case, the person, you know, was far less than half my age, but they were able to help me and navigate through a problem that all my years of risk management experience wasn't able to help me with.
It's such a nice example. Thank you so much, Laurie. So yeah, that's amazing. Talking about the uncertainty and the example you brought, let's set the stage for everyone so everyone's clear when we are talking about dealing with uncertainty, what you exactly mean, Laurie. Because in the context of projects, the common term we all know is risk management, dealing with risk. Are these two terms the same? Can you define it for us before we go deep dive into dealing with uncertainty and kind of tackle different aspects of it in projects?
Yes, that's a really good question, actually. So uncertainty really just, or the reason I've used that word is really just to help recognize that things are uncertain. Too often in project controls in particular, people have an expectation that we can forecast the future, for example, which is a very ambitious expectation. It's almost like predicting the weather, right? The idea that you can come into a complex project and predict the finish date with any sort of accuracy. So the idea with uncertainty is recognizing that we're in a very complex world and there's a high level of uncertainty around everything, every possible future state that we're dealing with. the difference between uncertainty and risk is, and I really like this definition of the difference from the risk doctor in the UK, is that risk is uncertainty that matters. In other words, uncertainty that could affect the objectives of our project or our initiative or whatever it is that we're trying to deal with. So risk looks at that uncertainty and says, okay, of that uncertainty, what are the key points that matter that are significant and could affect our project, rather than worrying about all of the uncertainties that might exist in the world in front of us.
I really like this term you brought, Laurie. So just wanted to repeat that risk is an uncertainty that that is, sorry.
That matters, yeah.
Yes, that matters. So,
Uncertainty that matters.
yes.
I love it too, because it's such a simple definition. It's easy to remember. And
Exactly.
it helps when you're on a project, if you're dealing with stakeholders, helping them understand, risk is just uncertainty that matters.
That matters. I love that definition. Thank you so very much. In your experience, Laurie, what are some of the most common type of uncertainty that project professionals usually face today, especially in those high-stake, complex environments? Can you bring us some examples?
Yes, so from my experience, it's really starting to change quite a lot. So the whole project landscape is starting to change, and some of the changes are quite difficult to navigate, but they're also very exciting as well. So for me, if I had to sort of group it into sort of three key areas, I would say firstly, the expectations of stakeholders. So things like climate change, carbon reduction emissions and things like that are really starting to change the way that we plan and do projects. So the physical risks of climate change, as well as the transition risks. So if we're implementing a project, we're going to be using different materials, different methods to what have been used in the past. So that sort of changing societal expectations is a really big uncertainty. Another one would be the geopolitical climate. So I've certainly in my time, I've never seen a time where the geopolitical environment is changing and evolving so quickly. So with markets changing, with tariffs changing, with different policies changing that can affect us, particularly when we're on larger projects and we have global supply chains. So that would be the second category. And then the last category, which I think is the most exciting one, is technology. So the proliferation of machine learning and AI in particular as a really great opportunity to help us navigate some of these new sort of emerging challenges and uncertainties, as well as a lot of the historical challenges that we've had on projects where, particularly on larger projects, we haven't been fantastic at predicting the time and cost outcomes. So it's, that opportunity to leverage technology, particularly to cover some of our blind spots, our optimism biases and some of these sorts of things that as human beings that we have on projects.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Great types of uncertainty that you just provided. So talking about that, and for most of us who are in project controls, we are familiar with tools that we are using for managing risks, such as Monte Carlo simulation, QRA, quantitative risk assessment. Where do you think those techniques, such as quantitative risk assessment, are these tools fall short in something, or is there anything that you would like to complement them with, or they're good as they are and you recommend? You've been in risk for quite some time, so if we just run quantitative or qualitative risk analysis, is that what all matters, or there are some other factors that we need to take into consideration to have a holistic view of the project risk and uncertainty?
Yes, that's a great question. So certainly quantitative risk analysis is so fundamentally important. So it's that opportunity all we're really doing is creating a model. So a mathematical model that helps us better understand risk. That is super important. But to the real point of your question, which is really what are maybe some of the blind spots or some of the gaps in that? So certainly the most common challenge I see with the quantitative risk assessments that are done is making sure that quantitative model is informed by a very good qualitative process. So too often I see quantitative risk assessments that are done that are nowhere near broad enough, so that they have nowhere near enough range, or they're not fully capturing the risks associated with the project. So those of you who might be more familiar with the quantitative side, but if you've got a quantitative model that gives you a range of, plus or minus 10% or something like that, and the project is only 10% through engineering design, it's a bit of a red flag that the model hasn't fully captured the range of risks on a project. So for me, the most important one and the biggest gap that I see, particularly on larger projects, is not doing an all hazards risk assessment up front. So not capturing the full variety of risks in a qualitative way so that these can be built into the quantitative model to get a full, rich picture of the uncertainty on a project. So for me, it's really that front-end process of making sure you've got a very rigorous, robust risk workshop that's welcoming all hazards. So not just safety hazards, but environmental hazards, cost and schedule uncertainty. So having a diverse range of stakeholders, so that all of those risks and opportunities, or threats and opportunities, can be baked into the mix before we do the modelling. So too often that qualitative process gets shortened or abbreviated, so it'll be only a small set of risks that go into the model, and naturally the model is going to be less reliable. So investing time, getting the people in, making people feel safe and comfortable, sharing all of the risks, and then doing the modelling, for me, is where there's an opportunity to do things better.
So more investment on the qualitative side before we jump into the quantitative side, right?
That's right, yeah. So making sure we've got a comprehensive set of risks in a qualitative way, then building the model, not jumping in too quickly. Obviously, we're often under time pressure on projects, so it does become a bit of a balancing act, but the more we can sometimes you have to slow down to get a better result. So certainly in risk, engaging the stakeholders, fully understanding the range of risks and getting them to bounce ideas off each other. So often there'll be sort of subject matter experts that need time to come up with the best solution, giving people time to do that before then modelling and coming up with your quantitative risk scenario.
And talking about the ranges that you said and kind of spending time on the qualitative side, understanding different stakeholders' views, understanding the risk in the project, and basically risk identification process to be done properly. I've been sitting into those risk assessment workshops sometimes a couple of days, and I found it like it's really hard they're very subjective when they're asking subject matter expert in terms of the ranges. Okay, in the best case scenario, how long it's going to take or how much it's going to cost. In the worst case scenario, sometimes it's just your gut feel. So I just want to bring like this challenge of the human bias into the factor. Like how can awareness of the human factors such as cognitive bias, assumptions, and communication really help project control professionals, first with the risk assessment, and second to improve the forecasting, reporting, and performance management. What are your thoughts in that aspect, Laurie?
Well, firstly, I agree 100%. This really is so much of the challenge. So that you've got a project that's under time pressure, particularly project managers. So I really admire project managers, the number of challenges they have to deal with. And this is where project controls and risk professionals can really add value, because often we have more time and we're under less pressure than a project manager, for example. So for a project manager, it's really the perfect storm. They're far more likely to be having optimism bias and some of these sorts of things because of that pressure they're under, where they're forced to make quick decisions. Where we can better support project managers or help reduce the risk of some of these biases is by having that extra time, by looking at the people who might be invited to a risk workshop and just making sure they've covered off all of the different types of risks. So some of the simple techniques that you can use is to make sure that, for example, there's a safety expert there, there's an operational expert there, you've got a construction expert involved, a design expert. So considering the life cycles of the project, as well as the different subject matter expertise domains. So things like an environmental expert. So having that good mix and helping the project manager make sure that you've got that good mix of stakeholders involved. But secondly, even raising awareness for the project manager of things like optimism bias, because in project controls and risk, we're very aware of these things because we're consciously dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. The world is a little bit more complex for a project manager. They're juggling all sorts of stakeholders and that, generally under a lot of time pressure. So the more we can help them by raising their awareness and supporting them to have more effective risk workshops, we can only get good outcomes from that.
Thank you, Laurie. So I would like to now refer back to a framework, a beautiful framework you have in your book, if I'm not mistaken, a decision-making framework. So can you shed more light on that framework, and can you walk us through how it's applied in real-world context?
Yes, sure. So it's a fairly broad framework, but one of the most important things about it is it implements mindset. So a lot of the good project management frameworks out there around decision-making do talk about a lot of the good decision-making tools that we can use. So things like cost-benefit analysis, for example, the plan, do, check, act cycle, super powerful, but often they don't address the mindset elements. So in the book, it looks at using those frameworks, but combining it, first of all, with some mindset elements. So one of them is to firstly embrace uncertainty. So look at uncertainty as an opportunity, first of all. So the more you can get excited and get comfortable when you're dealing with uncertainty, the better, because that's really the opportunity to add value to the project and to help the project manager by helping them cover off on some of their blind spots, for example. So first of all, embrace uncertainty, get excited about it and want to understand it. And then the second aspect of the framework is to use decision-making models. And most of your audience, if they're from a project controls background, will be quite strong on decision-making models. But then lastly, the second mindset element is to embrace adaptability. So to be more flexible. And this is really recognizing that whenever we're on a project, we need to be continuously getting new information and updating our plans and our models. So So as we work our way through a project, uncertainty generally is reduced if we're constantly taking in new information and updating our models. And our models could be a quantitative risk analysis, it could be a schedule. Whatever it is, whatever the model is that we're using for a project, we should be continuously seeking new information and updating our models on that basis. So it really is a simple framework. One, embrace uncertainty. So lean into it. Secondly, use good decision-making frameworks like the PDCA cycle. And then lastly, be adaptable. Be continuously taking in new information and adapting our models, our schedules, our forecasts as we take in that new information.
So can you also give us an example? Great three-step framework that you just shared. So can you also give us an example how we can adopt this framework into real life? Just step out a bit from the projects. And I know your book is applicable for both projects and personal life. Do you have any example on the personal side that you applied this model and it worked? Or you can give us some advice, because all of us are facing uncertainty risks in our own personal life, how we can adopt this framework.
Yeah, so I think the best way to do it, so if you think of something like the PDCA cycle, which for me is so beautiful because it's so simple and it's so basic. So first of all, we plan, and I would say when we do the planning step, we consciously think of all of the risks and uncertainties that we deal with. And stepping back into the example that I gave earlier on, where I was trying to cross the road in Chennai, India. So for me, I stood on the side of the road. I knew what my objective was. I needed to get to see my friend Siva, to have this meeting with him at 9 o'clock. And so I was standing on the side of the road planning. And unfortunately, in this exercise, all of the planning skills, I was navigating my brain was going through all of my life history, and there was just no solution to coming up with a way to navigate across the road. But in this particular scenario, I was very fortunate that a subject matter expert just happened to come and present themselves to me. So through this planning process, I was able to engage with a subject matter expert who helped me to get across the road. So that's the first step, is the planning process, and going very slowly with our planning process, not rushing through the planning process. Secondly, we do. So we take steps. And in this particular case, the steps we took were sort of walking out into the road, which really would have terrified me. It would have been something that I never did. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do that. I would have been worried that I would get run over, for example. So we did that, and I stopped and I looked and I learned that the cars all just sort of deviated around me. So I took that feedback. So that was the checking step. So seeing that I was safe, I was going to be okay, I was still alive. And then I took more action. So I started taking additional steps and worked my way through. So that nice little simple example is similar to what we experience on projects. So project controllers work with the project team to help create that plan, assess the risks, and eventually develop a baseline plan. We take some steps, we do some work, we get our performance reports in that month, we learn some things are going well, we learn some things are not going so well, and then we take the next action. So for me, I'd say the most powerful framework of all of them is the PDCA cycle, so a project controls cycle, actually adopted from quality management, the Deming cycle, but super powerful. But in that, the main thing I would say is, in that planning stage, go slow down. Don't just go off gut instinct. Help the project manager slow down. Make sure that you've engaged, you've thought about all of the risks before then jumping into the do step.
And I love that. I just wanted to bring my own personal experience into this, Laurie. First of all, yeah, I love the PDCA cycle. My background is manufacturing. I've been in car manufacturing when I started my career. So we've been too much into quality, continuous improvement, and yes, the Deming cycle, or PDCA cycle, which stands for plan, do, check, act, and then repeat this. So it really works in everything. And I remember one of the first courses I ever developed, the framework was exactly PDCA cycle. So I firmly believe in that, and especially the planning side. Most of our audience in planning, and I also have a background in planning. I mean, started with planning, but in project control. So I applied the same techniques into my personal life, especially planning. I'm so big in planning, and I really love the fact that you said the first step is embrace the uncertainty and start with planning. So when we are facing with challenging situations in our life, or a challenging project, or a dream that we want to achieve but looks so hard, planning and breaking it down really makes things, very complex stuff, achievable. For me, planning is key. I don't start a day without having the written plan, and I even give myself progress at the end of each task that I'm doing, give myself a pat on the back at the end of the day. Every weekend, I plan for the whole week ahead. Every month, we plan the month ahead. Every year, we plan the year. Every quarter, we plan the quarter. So, and because of that, we could achieve a lot. We could serve a lot of people because of that planning, because of breaking that down. So I really love this, that emphasize that you have brought into this in dealing with uncertainty, planning, and then taking action, not just planning and envision that, but taking action toward that. So it just resonated with me deeply. So thank you so much for sharing it, Laurie. I just see a comment. It didn't come to the live room, but I see that here. Alberto is one of our most engaging audience. Thank you so much, Alberto, for joining us. He's asking, how can a leader maintain clarity and team focus when project goals are compromised by technical obstacles or unexpected changes?
Yes, that's a really great question. I think so. Going back to the mindset, or back to the human side, I think one of the most useful things is to recognise that we're all human beings, and there's sort of two very simple models of how we make decisions. One is called System 1, and this is our sort of automatic, intuitive response, almost a little bit like the flight or fight response that we might have when we're sort of dealing with decisions. And it's our sort of basic decision-making mode. And we tend to prefer to do that because we're lazy. We don't like slowing down and thinking. The second decision-making method, as developed by a guy named Daniel Kahneman, is System 2 thinking, which is really slowing down and being more analytical and more thoughtful, and thinking through all of the facts and details and exploring the different scenarios and coming up with a decision that way. So certainly, I think the greatest opportunity in those sorts of situations where you might have a lot of time pressure, a lot of rapid technical changes, is to encourage team members to not necessarily make a decision straight away if they don't need to, but to take the time to analyse the scenario. So to invest in time in what-if scenarios, for example. So doing the modelling of the scenario to explore the best possible outcome. Now, not every situation you can afford that time. So the first test is really, is this a time-critical decision? So does a decision need to be made immediately? And if not, take advantage of that extra time to do the modelling to make sure you get the decision right. And once again, project managers often don't have that luxury of time, and this is where risk analysts, project controllers can really help do a lot of the heavy lifting for project managers to do a lot of that sort of modelling and scenario analysis in the background to try to help them come up with the best possible solution.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and great question, Alberto. So I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat so we can just ask your questions throughout this discussion. So please have your question coming regarding the topic of dealing with uncertainty, especially when things get messy in our projects or in the personal life, both just applicable here. So Laurie, going back to the discussion that we had earlier, in regards to making fast decision making, especially when we're under pressure or things like that. So what habits or mental clues do you personally use or recommend to stay really clear-headed and focused when decisions need to be made quickly, especially when there are tough decisions that you have to make?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So that's the reality, is it's not every time we can go off and do a quantitative risk model of all of the scenarios. So the best thing for ourselves as individuals, but also for project team members that we can support, is to really be aware of your values. So at an individual level, this can be, something like a compass that guides you when you're dealing with uncertainty, that can help lean you towards decisions that are best for you. And everybody has their own different values. For some people, it might be travel. For some people, it might be time with their family, whatever it is. But always have that self-awareness of your own personal values and use that as a guiding compass when you need to make a decision on the fly. And in a project situation, being aware of what the overall project team values are. So what is the culture of our project team? Do we like taking risks, or do we prefer to be quite conservative? At least understanding what that culture is and those values of your project team members, and being aware of that, so that when a scenario comes up, you can help present the information to the project manager or whoever the decision maker is in a way that they're more likely to make the decision in a way that lines up with the values of a project. So a typical example might be if there's a particular safety risk involved in a scenario, by bringing that to the fore, helping make sure that the project team are aware of that, it can help navigate them towards a decision that's going to avoid that safety risk, assuming that the values of the company are not to take those sorts of risks.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Now I would like to shift the focus to the great book that you have written, Dealing with Uncertainty. So as I went through that, as I mentioned earlier, so I found so much relevance on the personal side. So it's not just technical content, although you can apply it to the technical world as well. But what was your goal, or what do you expect people who are reading through your book to gain out of it? What is the ultimate goal of going through that book? And if you have a copy of it, I forgot to bring my copy. I couldn't find. I told you before this. I took the book to the vacation I was in, and I couldn't locate it. But if you have a copy, I would love you to show it to the audience, and also tell us a bit more about the core message or shift of thinking that the reader would have by the end of that book.
Okay, so I guess the core message, so getting back to more the personal side, or the human factors, is that our minds have evolved through evolution to help us survive. And because they've evolved to help us survive, we don't like uncertainty. So generally, as human beings, we've learnt to panic a little bit, to become quite anxious when we're dealing with uncertainty. So you can imagine the caveman, getting some rest in the cave, and suddenly there's an unfamiliar rustle in the bushes. Suddenly, your adrenaline is running. You're on high alert. So this reaction to uncertainty is something that is from our evolutionary past that has kept us alive. However, it doesn't necessarily help us thrive in life and thrive on projects. So in the modern world, there's a real opportunity for us to be aware of that automatic reaction we have to uncertainty and to lean in and embrace it. So to look at uncertainty, well, first of all, it's not going away. So the levels of uncertainty that we deal with in life and in projects is continuing to increase. So there's a great opportunity for us to lean into uncertainty and to see it as an opportunity. So to turn off that evolutionary sort of reaction, which is to see it as a threat, but to see it as an opportunity to help ourselves navigate, to pursue something new, but also to help those around us to also see the opportunity to help others feel calm and to help them navigate through it in a calm way. So wherever there is uncertainty, there's an opportunity to add value and create value. And for us to be aware of that and to lean into it is really the key message of the book. And I do have a copy of the book here with me, Shohreh. So there is a copy of the book. So for those of you who are interested, you should be able to find that on Amazon at the moment. I think the Kindle version is actually free just today. So if you are interested, you might like to Google that and download a copy as well.
Yeah, Laurie was kind enough to offer the Kindle version for our audience for free. So I cannot thank him enough because he spent years writing that book, and offering something so valuable for free means a lot. So if you are here joining us live, don't miss that opportunity. But again, I would invest in something great like that. I even told Laurie, are you sure you have to don't offer this for free, because it's really the valuable book, and I already enjoyed a few pages of it that I have read and how much impact it had on me. So I highly recommend this book, especially coming from someone who has been in the world of risk management in projects and now making it so easy to understand such that you can apply it in your personal life. So if you want the free version, the Kindle is available on Amazon, or if you want to have a hard copy, that's also available on Amazon that you can look into. Let me see if you have any questions. Okay, so one more thing. So regarding this book, as I said earlier, my understanding was, okay, it's about uncertainty about risk and managing risk in projects. So for those of us who is in projects and either managing risk or dealing with risk and dealing with uncertainty or running QRA, so how this book helps those people in project controls? I know it's written in a way that everyone would benefit, but can you be more specific on how your book can help people in project controls?
Yes, so I think the main benefit, or I guess the unique thing about the book, is that it combines the qualitative human elements, so that the aspects that it is to be human, so that natural fear of uncertainty that I mentioned earlier. So it combines the qualitative aspects as well as some of the quantitative tools. So it really looks at the human factors, so the human side of the equation as being the enabler. So if we can make people feel comfortable, if we can recognize that every success or failure on a project is a good learning opportunity. So often, particularly people who are involved in projects may not be so comfortable talking about failures or lessons learned on projects, but it's about making people feel comfortable so that we can learn from our mistakes, see all of our mistakes as learning opportunities, as well as projects that have gone well, so that we can get a greater input to a project and improve the decision-making processes. So by recognizing those human factors, the way human beings behave, we can improve the way we model risk. We can improve the schedules we can create, the plans that we create for a project.
Yes, indeed, for sure. So who do you recommend this book to? Who would be the target audience for reading through Dealing with Uncertainty, the book that you have written, Laurie?
Yeah, so it really is a broad target audience, and what has really been a pleasant surprise for me is the number of people from diverse backgrounds, so people from medical backgrounds, nurses, all sorts of people who were not sort of normally in my circle of influence have read the book and found it useful. But I think mostly project practitioners will find it useful. So because my life has been around projects, lots of failures and learnings and things like that, I think project practitioners, particularly project controls professionals, will find it most useful. And where it can be useful, I feel like for a lot of project controllers, they will be quite familiar, particularly with the early chapters. But even as a book that helps influence others, so very helpful for project managers who often don't understand the detail and the analysis and the decision-making frameworks as well as we do in project controls, can be very helpful for them as well to raise their awareness of some of these common errors that we tend to make on projects. So if you know a project manager or project team member who you're having a little bit of trouble getting them across the line or getting them to support project controls a little bit better, maybe give them a nudge towards the free book or something like that, because it really is a business case for why it's so important to have good risk assessment and good project controls on our projects.
Great, thank you so much, Laurie. So in regards to, let me just change the topic here. So in regards to the future-proofing our career. So as you know, it just the AI emerging. So a lot of talks about AI and getting adopted to the AI and the revolution that are happening. And I remember back then, I think 7-8 years ago, we had a master class with you, Laurie. You were talking about all these things that are happening in our way for planning scheduling, if I'm not mistaken, and you were just warning us about all these evolutions of technology which we see today. So in terms of future-proofing our career, so what are your advice, especially with all this uncertainty that are around us, with all these new changes that are happening? Is there any word of advice you have for project professionals in terms of dealing with uncertainty, and especially on the technological side of the things that we all see evolving?
Yeah, so uncertainty is a part of life, is really the key message. And for me, uncertainty is becoming more prolific. So things are becoming more uncertain and less certain as time goes on. So if you're considering about future-proofing your career, to me, it makes a lot of sense to be positioning yourself as someone who's very comfortable in navigating uncertainty, but also helping other team members deal with uncertainty. So once again, it's getting to that human side of the equation. So because uncertainty is always going to be there, because it's becoming more prolific, if you can position, or first of all, give yourself the mindset so that you're able to navigate through uncertainty very well yourself. So that's about embracing uncertainty. It's about using decision-making frameworks. And lastly, being adaptable. So if you can look at your own self through those three lenses, and then be somebody who can come into project teams and help project teams in those three areas. So help project teams embrace uncertainty, help project teams use decision-making frameworks, and help project teams be agile and adaptable in their approaches. Then you're going to be, first of all, it's going to likely to be very useful for your own life. Life is like a project. But secondly, you're going to be extremely valuable to a project team, because projects are also having to deal with this increasing uncertainty as well. I guess that the element I would add to that, the specifics, would be embrace new tools. So embrace AI. If it's something you've been avoiding, lean into it. It's our friend. So if you lean into it, you can empower your project teams earlier, both through generative AI and conversational platforms like ChatGPT type platforms, but also more on the quantitative side. So a lot of these biases that we have, AI really can help us in the future cover off on a lot of these biases by looking at historical data, seeing trends that we don't see, and improving our forecasts.
Exactly, well said. Even I'm seeing AI related risk tools that even don't need any human side. Again, I don't know how successful they are, but based on the trends and historical data, they come up with ranges, they come up with all these risk features. So that's kind of a fast, accelerated way we are moving forward in projects with the AI. And yeah, we already see the power of AI in our everyday work and everyday use. So yes, definitely adaptability and embracing that change and getting into that soon enough would be really important. And I really love the fact that everything you're talking about, Laurie, goes back to the decision making framework that you have in your book, that 3 step, basically embracing the uncertainty. You just talked about this future proofing carrier. Exactly that, embracing all the changes that are happening, and also go through that, taking action and being flexible. So these are the things that you mentioned, which is interestingly applicable to everything that we are talking about here, from projects to personal life. So thank you so much, Laurie. I see 2 questions from our audience. And we have now time for questions. If you have more questions, please have them coming. So let me ask or showcase the first question here. Arthur is asking, uncertainty is present in most of the projects. And you just talked about like your team becoming agile and agile process. So his recommendation is implementing agile concepts can be a measure of managing better on fast track project environments. So what are your thoughts on the agile and implementing agile on projects?
Yes, absolutely. So generally speaking, if you think of two extremes, one is waterfall, so the traditional way of doing a project, so understand the requirements, do the detailed design, procure, install, commission, handover, versus agile projects, which are more exploratory in nature, so tend to be more incremental. So you'll develop, so you'll design, develop, and produce a product, put it in front of the customer, get feedback, and go back and design and develop and redevelop, for example. So generally speaking, projects are becoming more and more agile in nature. And the good thing about agile, it's almost like, for those of you who haven't done an agile project before, it's like rolling wave planning, except that you only have a very small rolling wave window in front of you. So you're only planning a very small, what's often called a sprint in front of you, and the rest of it will be quite uncertain. So it really is a very effective process for dealing with uncertainty. So particularly on systems and software projects, yeah, I agree 100%. A great way to deal with uncertainty is to have a well-structured, agile approach to project management.
Yeah, maybe that's why the PMBOK now is more leaning toward agile processes now, and it just the whole framework has changed toward agile. So, thank you for bringing that, Arthur. A good question or good comment, basically. So, we have another question that's highlighted on here by Amir, and I'm not sure it's how relevant it can be to the discussion we had, but it's a general project question. So, as we know, every project is unique, and while the goal is always to finish on time and within budget, last-minute changes or value engineering often requires the engineering approval, which can take days. And he's saying since project tasks are so interconnected, so PMs don't always have that flexibility, how can the approval process be accelerated? And have you dealt with such cases more efficiently? So basically, he's asking about the decision-making process, the uncertainty along that you're waiting for approval before being able to move ahead. So, what are your thoughts on that, Laurie?
Yes, this is a good one. This touches on both the stakeholder side of things, as well as, once again, so I'm a big fan of using data, and changes, value engineering changes, and these sorts of things can add a lot of value to a project, but they can also add a lot of uncertainty. And so one of the key metrics, so if you're in a project that's particularly complex and you're dealing with a lot of changes, one of the good metrics to track and measure is the cycle time it takes from when an ECN or a first change is proposed to when it's eventually closed out. And I learned this the hard way from being on a project where the average cycle time of the changes that were being proposed was 180 days. So the poor project team they had this long queue of changes, and there was so much uncertainty. They didn't know which ones would be approved or not because it was taking so long. So what I would encourage you to do in that situation is to track the cycle time for your changes as one of the key KPIs that gets measured and gets tracked, which will help raise the awareness of the project team or the project manager or the project change board, whoever's responsible for those changes, to try to reduce that cycle time as much as possible. Not all changes can be implemented quickly, but the more they can be reduced, the more it reduces uncertainty for the project team members, the less likely it is to slow down and be a bit of a bottleneck for the project.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and thanks, Amy, for the great questions. So I don't see any more questions. We still have a few more minutes left. So maybe we can adjourn the session with the final thoughts or final advice from you, Laurie. What advice do you have for the audience? And one more time, how they can get hold of your amazing book you have written on dealing with uncertainty.
Thank you, Shohreh. So to reiterate, I would just encourage you to recognize and lean into uncertainty. So try to have the mindset of not avoiding it, which is often our automatic reaction, but to embrace it. So if you can be somebody who, when there's chaos happening on a project, when things get really, really messy, if you can be somebody who stays calm and you see that uncertainty and you just smile to yourself and think, okay, this is good. This is where I can add value, or this is where we can create value. It's going to be a very useful mindset for you to have. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, to embrace that uncertainty. That doesn't mean that all chaos is good chaos. We still want as much structure and frameworks as possible, but just to recognize that uncertainty is increasing and prepare yourself and have that mindset where you can embrace it. It's going to be very, very useful for you in your own life, as well as being helpful to project team members. It's a particularly powerful combination for project controllers, because generally as project controllers, we tend to be pretty good in the modeling and the scheduling and the planning. If you can combine that with a strong mindset for uncertainty, you're going to be valuable to any team. And lastly, if you have found today's topic interesting, or if you're interested in unpacking this in more detail, including a lot of my stories or learnings from successes and failures in my own life, I encourage you to look up this book. It's available on Amazon, and as mentioned, you can get a hard copy, or a Kindle copy is actually available for free for the next 24 hours as well. So feel welcome to grab a copy of the book, and if you've got any comments or feedback on the book, I welcome you connecting with me on LinkedIn and sharing your thoughts as well.
Just to add to that, if you just check the ratings on Amazon, you see it's almost 5-star rating by many people who had the advantage of reading this book. So we highly recommend going through this book, because it's not just applicable to your projects. It's written in such a simple, easy to understand language that you can apply it into your own personal life. And I really like how the advice you gave to our audience, Laurie, about embracing the change and changing that mindset, not just within us, but with our team as well. And it just reminded me of studying all the most successful people I have either gone to their conferences or studied their work, that they all had that mindset. Mm-hmm. So whenever they were dealing with something unknown, or like we call it uncertainty here, they embrace it. They saw it as an opportunity, as you mentioned earlier. So see the uncertainty as an opportunity for your growth, for going to the next step. And all of them had that mindset that I've got this. I've got this, and I will go through this challenge, and I will come out stronger from the other side. So if we can build this model of mindset in everything we do, we can achieve great things. So I really love this ending messages that you had for us. Again, it resonated with me. I'm telling you, every time you're talking about something from your book, I just want to go and finish that book. So thank you again, Laurie. Really appreciate you tuning in all the way from Australia in such an early morning time, your time, and also with your generous offer of offering your Kindle version of the book free for our audience for today. So it's just so generous of you. And a big shout out to everyone who joined us live. I see a lot of great comments thanking you for this great session, Laurie. So thank you so much, everyone who took time from your schedule to be here with us to listen to Laurie. And if you missed any part of that, don't worry, the recording will be placed in Project Controls Academy LinkedIn page as well as our YouTube channel forever. So you can go back to that or forward it to anyone who would benefit from this. So thank you again, Laurie. Really appreciate you for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Get a copy of that book. I highly recommend it.
Nice one. Thank you so much, Shohreh. So good to see you again. From the first time I met you at the conference in Orlando many
Yes.
years ago, it's so good that we can connect virtually like this. Very grateful for the opportunity. And thank you, listeners, for your great questions. I hope you have a fantastic day, and don't hesitate to reach out if you get a copy of the book.
Of course. Thank you again, Laurie. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we can see you again in person. Hopefully at Project Control Summit next time. Thank you so much,
Maybe.
Laurie.
Thank
Yes.
you. Bye-bye.
We appreciate you, and thanks everyone. Have a great day or night, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.